This is Alek Dincoff. We're back at it again for another Q&A with Steve Todd, founder and creator of Open Sourced Workplace, where I kind of pick his brain and he answers all the fun questions about what he's been doing this week. How are you today?
I'm good. It seems like it's been a little while since we spoke. So much has sort of happened in the last week, but no, it's good. Looking forward to the conversation. Looking forward to your posing questions.
I know we've touched in and out outside of these conversations. We do speak. It's not like we only come together for, half an hour once a week ever.
Yeah.
But you touched on developers here in between from last episode to this episode, and how you've been working with developers and how there's some frustrations and issues getting what your vision is, what you want into what they produce. But you've come up with tactics and some things that have worked for you. What are those strategies, tactics, things, maybe buzzwords, as people like to say?
Yeah, no, and so whenever you say frustrations or you say whatever, and a lot of it is down to my interpretation of what I'm asking for, and also the interpretation of what the developer is thinking they're giving. And some of it's just a disconnect. And honestly, I think a lot of it comes down to the developers I've experienced working with. They not overpromise, that's not right. They over deliver because there's so much scope creep that you do something, you see how something works, and you keep asking for a little more iterations. And I've been fortunate the folks I've been working with are very pleasing and want to do those things for me. And at some point there becomes a limit to where that goes. And there has been instances where they've had to put a stop on me in a sense of saying, okay, we've done X over here. That means we can't do Y over there. And that's fine. I didn't make that judgment call. That was something that was made with me. But again, it was always done, and both sides, both parties have always sort of been working under the expectation that it's a long relationship. So we work through those things. But in essence, from my own perspective, so how do I manage my own expectations? How do I manage what I communicate, what I give, so that what actually comes back to me is what I intended? And I just try to be a lot more descriptive, a lot more concise, a lot more asking questions, more specific questions, and providing more detail to the developer. Where I think when I initially began, you do a little wireframe, you do draw these little boxes and sketches of what you think something's going to look like, but you don't really then go into the deeper levels. Okay, well, if I click this button, where does that go, and what's the flow that you want to happen? And those are some of the things that I just assumed, again, probably a lot to do with my naivety, but assumed that, okay, whenever all that sort of functions put in place, that's just what happens. But as time was went on, I've had to learn a little bit. But again, as I said, I've been fortunate to work with good guys in a sense of the spirit and who they are as people. And the guys the guy who's developing the news site, he's been great because in essence, he manages me, right? He says, Steve, no, we've come to the limit. We've gone out, and that's fine. I have no issues with that. I'd much rather work in that environment than the environment that's just very lax and we just kind of move along and maybe you don't get what you're expecting. So he's really good at managing me. And, as we concluded the sort of next phase scope, he was like, we talk about delivery time. He says, well, depending on how you manage your scope creep. And I says, no, you're going to manage me because you're not going to allow me to do it. And some of it is sort of, okay, what are the things that I want to be a big rollout next phase or the phase after the phase after? And that's something I have to control myself. Fortunate with a lot of conversations I have with other startups that are a lot more advanced and bigger than what I currently am. It's like, how far do they plan ahead? How sort of far into the horizon do they think about the different things that they want to do? And most of them, to be honest, 12 months is the maximum they look out ahead. So it's interesting. A lot of it is just my own, it's managing me rather than my expectations of what someone's going to deliver. And a lot of that's down to me, even some of the little things where you and I are having conversations on what we're sort of doing and the things that you're doing for open source. And it's kind of like, in my mind, I say something and then I read it back afterwards because you asked me a question. I read and I go, of course, I wasn't as descriptive as I could have been, because me being more descriptive helps you. And it's the same thing when it comes to being, working with developers. You have to be really specific because no one else sees what's in your head. And that's something I'm having to learn to do a lot more of. When I'm talking, I can be a lot more descriptive and people get the spirit of what I'm saying. But when I'm actually writing and diagramming things out, I probably can get a lot better at being more descriptive in what they ask is, But one thing I will say is, so one thing that popped up this week, and again, as I said, we'll navigate through these little things that come up. And one thing I noticed, I've been watching a few YouTube channels on building websites and building out SEO. And I was watching one on how to maximize SEO on your site for free. And there's a couple things in there, and I went, I don't do those. I don't do those things. And I went and I had a look at my current site, and there was no SEO program set up to connect it to Google, the Google SEO. I'm like, are you kidding me? But these is just, again, this is all down to my own naivety. This is all down to me thinking where I'm putting in keywords. Those keywords, the developers on their side have plugged me in because I have Google Analytics, I have AdSense, everything connected to the site. But actually those plugins that actually do connect and do work your SEO were not in place. So again, last week we talked about Facebook Pixel putting that in. So I put those in this week. So again, I'm just getting little things of adding to the site and increasing my confidence in adding things to a WordPress site. But again, it comes down to me, right? That's my fault. That's not on the developer side. That's my expectation of what I thought they were giving to me because I asked for something. That's not necessarily what was in the definitive scope where the final product handed to me. But again, those were my mistakes, and that's my own stupidity. I saw it and I looked at it and I just went, "You're such an idiot." But again, these are just little things where you have to be so careful, where you may think you're getting what you think you got or what you've asked for, but actually maybe that's not what you did specifically ask for, and that's maybe specifically what you didn't get. And for my own thing, it's just like, I just didn't have the expertise or the knowledge to go and check back then. But this journey's given me some of those tools and skill sets.
Sure. Well, you grow with your business, right? Every good owner has to. And there will be a lot of things, even months, years down the line, you're going to smack yourself and say, oh man, if only I would have known, right?
Oh, I know, for sure.
Yeah, wisdom is a hard price to pay sometimes.
Yeah.
That's good that you're still staying with it and updating your site, especially with 2.0 coming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's one of those things where I actually, because I know the second site's coming up, I'm actually not scared to break the current site, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I'll go in and I have no fear to go and hit different buttons. And on the weekend, I did something. I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done? And I was like, okay, how do I backtrack? How do I get back? I was able to fix it. But again, these are just little things where whenever you know something else coming, that risk you're prepared to take that little bit more. And if things go wrong, well, okay, how far is it going to go wrong at this stage of the game? It's not really. So it's you have to be prepared to make those. But yeah, it's interesting.
Fantastic. Well, you touched very briefly. You said the keyword, Facebook Pixel. And we talked last week how you had just gotten it in. You kind of reiterated just now.
Yeah.
And those that are watching on Facebook, perhaps it's an even hotter topic there. Anything specific that you've seen come across? I know a lot of.
I haven't seen any. So what I did change what I was doing with Facebook. And if anything, I would say my click-throughs have went down dramatically. Now, I don't know whether it's because the system's got to learn behaviors and those folks who are coming to the site before it can really replicate. Maybe the volume just isn't there. But I've actually seen the opposite happen, to be fair. So, but again, these things take time, and you gotta go with it. And some of it is, so it's installed, but I have to learn how to use that, and I have to be prepared to sort of play around with it. So I'll do little things with that, but it's no major uptick in volume or traffic
Okay. Okay.
And the traffic I get on my site, I probably get about 100 visitors a day,
Oh, that's
which isn't dramatic, but again, it's not terrible, and again, it's not really. I'm not trying to measure things from those aspects. I just find it interesting. It's sort of like if you've got an upward trend and more people are coming, that means you're doing. It's sort of an indication of what you're kind of doing is people are liking people and people keep coming back. So yeah.
good. 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 Well, it'll be interesting to see how it goes in the future.
Mhm.
I just brought it up in case you saw something that jumped out at you this week.
No, it's a good question. Yeah.
But I know some people that do not just marketing, but online marketing. Uh, the owners, they have no patience. They say, okay, I want results. How about 24 hours? What can you get me?
Yeah.
And they're, well, whoa, we need time to build the strategy and see what works for us. And they say, so 2 days,
Yeah.
3 max, and it's not
Yeah,
gonna
no,
work.
I want to find something just so behind you, behind where I'm looking at you, I have my computer, and there's something I want to see because there's a website, a YouTube channel I've been watching a lot of this week, and sort of brought home to me the patients that you're just referencing, right? So it's called Income School, and they've
Income.
got Income School, and basically what these guys do is they build sites that basically are going to be income generating, just sites that just sit there and they're just self-funding. So they actually did a deep dive into how Google Analytics works, and Google published a paper, a 200-page paper of how they calculate their algorithms and so on and so forth. And one of the key takeaways, what they found and what they've always said, and now they kind of had the evidence to demonstrate that, is it takes 35 weeks for Google to actually ramp up your SEO for a particular article to get to where it's probably going to be. So where it's going to rank takes 35 weeks. And I was like, my goodness. So he goes, a lot of people try to cheat the system, game the system, and so on and so forth. There's tactics to get around those various things, but I had no idea it took that long. I don't know if you've had experience or you've found that, or I mean either.
No, that is new information for me. That feels like patience is a virtue, right?
Yeah.
32 weeks. I wouldn't have thought that, for coming from Google, but
Now, obviously, there's going to be sites like, you've got like New York Times, you've got, absolutely respected publications who actually, whenever they publish something, people take notice and people listen, and it's going to rank. And also they have the ability where they pay for the AdWords, and that sort of elevates their search. But for, your usual run-of-the-mill Joe Schmo who's creating their own site and trying to create something, I just couldn't believe it took 35 weeks.
well, it says something. We live in an age that everything is at our fingertips, almost, and we expect things faster and faster and faster. But it's not light speed. A lot of things still take quite a bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So moving into the new setup, you've talked to developers working back and forth. You've been put on a leash, so to speak, so you don't go overboard. And this is great. I know personally, I've had a little bit of experience, and I talked briefly outside of this with messaging systems about one person speaking to someone else, and how much headache I had gone through in the past with using programs and applications that did that sort of thing. Have you run into, because I know going forward with open source workplace, you want people to be able to connect on the site and speak. Have you gotten into any of that yet? How do you want it set up? How do you think it's going to look? And that may be so far off from the final product. That's fine. I'm just curious, because I know personally it was a frustration of mine.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, when I think about how people will connect and interact on the site, I mean, I actually was debating from a cost perspective, do I put a messaging tool on the site? And then with there, do I also then try and connect video and so on and so forth on the site?
Sure.
I was against it, just one, because of cost and bandwidth and so on and so forth. I mean, what I do plan to do is like what we're doing. I'm interviewing other people, and I'll be putting those interviews on the site. And that's opportunities for, people to get to know people, and get to know people who work in companies so that they can better understand the people behind the company. Because I think that's such a great way to get introduced to not new technology, but also within the industry. I think people go to great events to attend networking events, but never really get to know people.
Sure.
And I think this provides an opportunity for people to do that.
Since you mentioned people getting in touch with you, or the owner, or the intellect behind everything, I know you're going live on Facebook now. Is it something perhaps that you'd be interested in taking live questions from Facebook?
No, definitely. Yeah, no. It absolutely. The only thing I don't want to do is I don't want to take away from our interaction. I'm conscious of that, and I'm sure someday we'll figure out maybe we just do this on Facebook, you and I.
Okay.
So that allows that to do. But no, definitely up for questions.
Sure.
From the audience, absolutely.
Because that's something I could do as well. If I had a Facebook feed or something like that, if I see a question that pops out, I can throw it at you, say, user such and such, or, Facebook guest.
No, you're also assuming that people are going to be watching us, right?
If it goes like that, it could end up a lot of comments or things that come afterward from the recorded version. But still, I was just curious, picking your brain, because who knows how this will go in the future.
No, and part of it is, as I said, look, the objective of me doing this is, one, to have everything documented about a point in time, the journey I was on, right? I want to look back and be able to see and understand. And again, it's like I've said before, I wish I could have went back to January when I was starting this to sort of, in a way, record the journey, record my thoughts, record what my vision was. It's changed so much. But it's just, I just love to be able to see it, But so the other part of it is other people are going to be on this journey too. They're going to do it through themselves. So it's how do they learn lessons from me, and not make those stupid SEO mistakes that I made,
Okay, well then this will be fun. This is as an homage to your January of last year, or this year's self. What are the top 3 things that either you changed or you wish you knew what you know now, which is less than a year ahead of time? Just top 3 things you wish you would have known, or the biggest changes that just happened to you. And it may not relate to everybody, but it'll be interesting within such a 10-month gap-ish, that what's changed. Even if only one comes to mind, that's fine.
Yeah, so there's probably overarching things, right? Number one is probably patience. Understanding that things take longer than you think they will. Patience also in a sense of not rushing to do things, not rushing to. I started off very quickly trying to create content that wasn't very good, to be honest. And I actually probably wasted a lot of time, not a lot of money because I wasn't paying a lot, but I learned a lot from actually doing those things, right? But through that process, I was able to find really good writers, and I'm very fortunate now that I have those. But there's a lot of little tasks that I probably wasted time, energy, and effort. But actually, wasting that time, energy, and effort means today I probably cut straight right through to it. What would before may have taken me a couple of weeks, now it probably takes me, an hour, just because I did go through that journey before. The big thing that's changed is I did believe that there would have been an appetite for people who do the job that I do within companies to actually connect with like-minded people on a platform. So I thought there would have been an appetite and away from service providers. And I'm not saying that there probably won't be or there isn't. In the short window where I've tried, I couldn't. I just wouldn't have been able to get that sort of scale. Now, that said, it's not that there's not an interest, it's more of I didn't have the differentiation from other sites or other resources to make people want to sign up for what I was trying to do. And I didn't fully appreciate that. So on reflection, you know, I wouldn't have got to the phase 2 that I'm going to had I not made those, you know, the last 6 months that hadn't happened. The other side of it is I realized that actually a lot of, I already knew it, but I realized that a lot of the expertise and knowledge is not in the end users, so the people who are like me, but actually are in the service providers, the folks who do this work day in, day out, who are the educators and the coaches of end users like myself. They're the ones with the real expertise and the real knowledge. And so how do you bring those two people together so that actually they can do things in the right way with the right spirit? So that's kind of where I'm going, and that's kind of how my sort of my vision has changed somewhat, in a sense of I was there solely just to try and provide a service to the end users, while somewhat thinking about service providers, because I launched both at the same time. On LinkedIn, I launched a service provider network, and on my site, I launched it for the end user. So I knew somewhere along the line I was going to bring the two together. I wasn't sure when that was or how that would look.
Okay.
And you asked for the third.
Well, it sounds like you've got the big overarching one is patience, right? When you start out and you have a goal, it can take longer, expect it to take longer. If you're trying to build something great, you don't do it overnight.
Yeah.
It sounds like you were able to pivot a little bit. Your vision, what you saw was working, what you wanted to do changed.
Yeah.
And last but not least, it was quality, is what I heard. Because you were at the beginning, everyone says content is king. Maybe not everyone, but a lot of people have said that. But
sure.
Quality content is a big thing. When you're bombarded with so much content, no matter where you are, marketers, advertisers, they will find you. Wherever your attention is going, they will find you. But when you're bombarded with everything, it's quality. A lot of times it can make or break something. So that's what I heard. But if you have another that you want to add on.
You're so right. You're so right. The quality is the challenges in this world. There's so much noise, and it's how do you get the quality voice to be heard, and that's the biggest challenge I think that I have. I mean, I think some of the writing that folks are providing, I think is fantastic, and I get so excited when I receive the content, that I get so excited and I can't wait to share it. Or if I'm going to be utilizing someone else's content that's already been published somewhere else, I get that enthusiasm and excitement that I just got to go do it. You know, the perfect example was yesterday. So each week I do a Sunday morning squeeze. We've mentioned what that is. And I came across an article that blew my mind. And it was the Women's Workforce Equality to Global Index. And it's a study of 180 countries. And it rates all these countries by the equality that women live under. And it absolutely left me speechless. Speechless in a sense that, one, the United States was number 20 on the list. But on a ranking of 100, the highest score was a 94. So that means on 180 different things, or 170 some of the things that they read and ranked, there are people that just don't do certain things. And then it gives you a list of like 60 data points that just like, it blows your mind. And you know, it's all that went through my head was, I got to share this, because we can do so much better. And I want to be doing good with this. So I just basically took the content and I stopped what I was doing for my weekly review, and I published this because it was just to me, it was just so important. And I waited to share on LinkedIn till today because it gets bigger play on a weekday. And I put it on LinkedIn today. And the first comment I got was, it floored me. It was from a gentleman who basically said, you publish this, I'm paraphrasing, but in essence, you publish this, you didn't know, then it's the white males that rule the world. And if you didn't know this, then it clearly shows that that's what you are, because this is so obvious that it's out there. And while it's obvious, and while, to a degree that there's probably truth in what's being said, the spirit with which I'm sharing it was sort of lost in his message and his remark. But in essence, it's just like there are so many things that are just going on in this world that we're just either putting our head in the sand. And, discrimination happens in all walks of life, male over male, whites over whites, color over color, just in every aspect. And I just find this article and I just had to share it. And it's just like, so this is the type of content that, you talk about the quality of the content, but this content just has to be shared. It has to be discussed. It has to be, we got to find a way to do something with it to, I don't know, help address the situation. I don't know how. I just don't, but just hopefully by sharing, it stimulates somebody's thoughts, somebody's action. Because, there are countries in this world where women can only get jobs if their husbands allow them. There's rules that state that, and it's just mind blowing, But anyway, I went off on a tangent there. But.
No, well, it's a hot topic. It's a serious issue. So, tangent away. Don't just sweep it under the rug.
Absolutely.
The nature of your business is getting information out there, right?
Yeah. I just want people to like, share, and circulate it, because, again, it's just, as my thing on LinkedIn was, we can do so much better than this, so much better. The United States is number 20. There's just no reason for the United States to be number 20. It's just,
no.
In this day and age, no.
Out of curiosity, I know you don't have it in front of you. Do you remember what nation was ranked first?
Australia.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, good for them.
Yeah.
But it's not. You said no nation is like 100% on everything.
No.
So there's still room for improvement.
Yep.
Right. All right. It's a good message also to take home, whether it be for your business, for the workplace, the environment, how you treat your colleagues, coworkers, or those underneath you. There's always room for improvement.
There is.
Very good. Very good. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to share? Any hot topics that happened this week?
No, not really. I mean, there's a few things I was really excited to share.
Yeah.
And there's a gentleman, Andrew Mawson, who I got to meet. I'm actually interviewing him this week. He lives in the UK, and he runs a company that basically managed change management. I was fortunate to meet him at a tour of Microsoft last year. And his company does a lot of research, and they do research through third parties. But that research is all evidence-based by academics. And they basically did a research on what makes knowledge workers productive. And they put together, because in essence, whenever you go to manufacturing, it's very easy to measure how someone's productive. Okay, the production line takes X amount of time. This is the quality of work. We know whether there's a failure rate, if there's a success rate, and you can measure those things. Mm-hmm. When it comes to a knowledge worker, often what's in the head is you can't manage that. So how do you manage it? And then if you're going to manage it, then how do you design and build workplaces for those people? And also then if you're going to design a workplace, what technology do you need to give these folks to allow them to be productive? And then how do you organize your business structure, your organizational structure, to maximize knowledge workers and how they actually work? So it was a 10,000 word article that's split into 3 different sections. I probably should have done 4. The last one was a little bit long, and it took like 20 minutes to read or something. But the actual content in there was outstanding. I loved it. And again, this is one of those ones where I got really excited to share. Mm-hmm. There's 3 or 4 other ones that I'll be sharing over the next couple of months. But I just love the simplicity of it all, because in essence it does boil down to simplicity. But basically the key takeaway from everything they did is all about social cohesion, social how we interact, how we're respected, how we're trusted, how we should leverage the world around us and then bring that together for the workplace. And you think about everything you do is like, how much more effort do you put in for your friends as opposed to a colleague? For your friends, you'll stay and you'll do what you need to do. For a work colleague, it's easier to make excuses, So it was a great article. It was long, but I thought it was a great article.
Well, that's great that they took, not just they did a survey or a study, but they took multiple intellectuals and their results, and they took so much data, pushed it all together. That helps take out hopefully some biases.
Yeah, and if I remember rightly, it was like 800 different studies they looked at.
That
I read it all, so it's incredible.
That's good. Because that helps show outliers and get whatever the standard deviation or the bell curve, what tends to work.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they drew conclusions. I mean, if it was a long article, and you said that, I think twice you mentioned how long it was, but you're still so excited to share what you learned, that they were able to draw conclusions and really show what the data meant. They didn't just say, oh, here's a bunch of dots in the line. Workplace stuff.
Yeah.
They said, hey, it's a lot about friendship, respect, the social interactions. That's good.
Yeah, and whenever you're taking responsibility to publish something, the detail that you read something and the data you then absorb, because you're trying to make sure every word and every sentence makes sense and kind of all flows and so on and so forth. And he being, from the UK, he writes a little differently. Past tense, third person, and some of his words are spelled a little differently. I would say correctly, but I've lived over here for a long time. I don't know what the right tense and so on and so forth is these days. But it was kind of interesting as you go through it, because I didn't want to change too much on him because it's his work. But there's a few things that I did, but I kind of left as much as I could alone. But whenever you go through this, it's amazing actually how much you retain and how much deeper I get to know the content, how much deeper I get to know the subject. And my question for you is, whenever you're reading, because obviously, for those who don't know, Alek is actually narrating all the content I have on the site. Alek is narrating most of that, if not all of it. Some of the writers, I give them the option if they want to do the narration themselves. So whenever you're narrating, do you get to that level of detail or insight into the content, or for you, is it just more getting into the rhythm of reading something? I was always just curious to know.
And it'll depend on the assignment. In this line of work, it's very information based. You're trying to explain something this is an interesting article. It's much different than a commercial, right? You're not trying to just say, who is this character? It's, you actually get to dive into the information. It's more very much content based, trying to convey it the right way. For me, it just depends on the article. Some things jump out and grab me, and I'm really into it. I'm sure if people end up listening to a lot of the audio version of the articles, they'll hear my voice probably get excited on certain things, and that's just my personality shining through. I actually am excited, but there are other articles that maybe things that I have less of a background in, that they sink in when I'm editing, because I have to hear it twice now. I read it once, I say it out loud, and then I listen to it. Just depends on the day, I guess, if I really latch onto an article and say, wow, in the midst of the reading. And also, I don't want to put too much emotion into it to distract from the article. So it's a different balance.
So whenever you're doing it, so you'll get a piece of work from me. Will you read it once yourself, and then you'll go into your booth to record it, or what do you do? How do you do that?
It depends. There is such a thing as a dry read. I've been told that my natural speaking tone is more the casual, explanatory type, which is great in this line of work, because I fall in line better than most. But most of the articles, I'll get the main points. Also, a big thing is to read the end. If you can pull the takeaway, right? If you understand the message,
Mm-hmm.
then like, so read the last paragraph, start from the beginning and go. So you have the message in mind, and then it can come through your words as you can. It just depends. It depends on the technique I'm using that day. Because if it's a really interesting article and I start skimming it, and I can just jump right into it because I'm interested. And also a little, I guess, movie magic on my end, for those who aren't used to recording themselves, don't do a podcast or record themselves on Facebook or something going live.
Yeah.
If you mess up, you can just say it again, right? With the correct embellishment and enthusiasm.
Yeah. No, I was just always curious because I mean, yeah, there's some of the recordings you've done, you do hear those little corrections and so on and so forth, very minor, but yeah, no, it's because I've always been impressed, and I can always tell whenever you're reading and you're enjoying, rather than there's probably certain sections that are a little more complicated to say, and you can tell the difference. And the reason why I say this, because as I told you before, I tried to record one or two of the articles myself, and I found it a nightmare. I really did. One, nightmare to record. Two, to say all the words correctly, because I mean the articles that I was trying to read was the Leesman Index, and some of the words in there are just like they're not straightforward. You know, the names of the like professors and some doctors and so on and so forth. And then not only was it difficult to record, it was also difficult to listen to myself.
That, that's, I would say that's almost, there's a not necessarily a special talent, but there are certain types of people that's not they should never listen to themselves back, right? Especially people that are real, not necessarily, I'm not saying you, but people that are hard on themselves, too hard, right? They might get in their own head.
No, for me it was just like, would I pay to listen to this? And it was like, no way would I pay to listen to me, you know. But then to be honest though, I put a low benchmark, so whenever I heard yours I was like, whoa, that's good.
That's very sweet of you. But
but no, to be fair, as like, you know, whenever I was, so it's going back to, you know, the lessons learned. So when I was trying to find someone to do audio, I was overwhelmed by the responses that I got. Must have got 30, 40, maybe even 50 responses. And as you know, I said, okay, I want someone to read the first section of this article. And then I got all these people come through, and some of them are like really, really good. And some people are not very good. And some people actually just go and use robots to do it, you know.
I wouldn't have thought that, really.
Yeah. You can tell. There's definitely something in there that's not natural, but
quality. Going back to quality, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then what I did was went through a process of elimination, and then I got down to 2 or 3, and then I asked somebody else their opinion. And you know, it's always good to hear other people's opinions. And then I went back, and that was actually almost one of the things I've learned with the writing is redundancy, right? So if you have one person, that one person leaves you, what do? Okay, so you need to have 2. So you try and cater for the redundancy. So whenever I got to know you, and I heard, and then we chatted on the phone, and I thought we hit it off right away. I didn't get anybody else, so don't let me down. Just so you know, you're on the hook here. And it's been recorded. It's on Facebook, and it's now on this as well. So, but no. But yeah, it's. I was just always curious how you went through your process, because people who are masters of the skill, it's like, okay, so what do they do? How do they do it? How do they set themselves up for this? You know. So I mean, another question: how many recordings would you do a day? I mean, if you're on your typical day. Understanding there's fluctuations between, you know, day A and day B.
Sure. Well, it's not fair. Not necessarily fair, but that's a tough question. The reason being, if you would have asked me 2 months ago, how many recordings am I doing per day? I would have said, I'm doing one this whole week. It's an audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's it. Everybody else, I would say, yeah, I can get your things done. Do you mind if I take a week to do so? Because the audiobook is a day in and day out, and you don't want to overstress your voice. When I'm recording, I don't have a tie on usually, just so the throat can breathe. And heaven forbid I get sick a day, right?
Yeah.
So I don't try and book myself to the brim, and it really just depends on the job. And that's the issue. So I could say, I'm doing anywhere between 4 and 10 articles a day, and that could be a completely bold lie certain days.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah.
Other days, you have to have time to recoup. We talked about that previously, where you have your you have Brain FM. We're going to plug that because it's such a great tool.
Yeah.
And you also have exercise. You do a few different things to help rejuvenate you. So there also has to be time away from, because if you can't tell, I'm in my booth as we speak, and it's a box. And even some prison cells have windows, right? Right.
I've heard. Yeah.
So, yeah. Just to put it in perspective.
So another question. Sorry. So this.
You're making it all about me.
I know. It's good though. It's good. It's important that people get to know you too. So when you're selecting somebody to work for, or to work with, or partner with, or provide service to, however you want to phrase it, do you have a criteria where you evaluate? Because you've had a lot of experience in, and a lot of your projects are probably one-off, lots of repeat. So what sort of criteria and how do you evaluate who to work with?
So you hit the nail on the head. You said we spoke and things went well. Communication. You can take that in almost any sector. If you are not communicating with someone correctly, if your message, bringing it back to the beginning, if your message doesn't get across right, and the product that someone is producing, or the service that someone is giving, or the desired result just isn't being met, it can get real frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest thing, knowing that someone's willing to. Flexibility is nice in this industry. I say industry, obviously, I'm in the vocal section, obviously, with the website, the actual information side.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is just understanding communication. So that's my biggest guideline. I've had people come across where they say, Alek, I want to work with you, and I'll say something, and they'll take it the wrong way, and I'll say, I don't want to discount anyone right off the bat. I believe in second chances. But it is something I kind of put in the back of my mind to think about, all right, if something else goes wrong, then I know we're not going to be a good fit. We need to draw the line in the sand. That's I like details, just so I can get things done to people's specification and standards.
Yeah.
So, for me,
that's something I have to work on. I mean, there's a couple of things where I think I've left you hanging a little bit, that just in my own mind, I know exactly where it is, but that doesn't necessarily mean you know exactly where it is. And that's something that I've consciously I got to get better at, So.
Well, don't be hard on yourself, because I am very flexible. I think you've done a great job compared to, and the clients that I've worked with before, the people that I've met, you are doing great. You're fantastic, by the way. So everyone on Facebook who can hear me, let the record show he is fantastic. But it's true. But flexibility is a big thing with anyone in any industry. If you're very rigid, if you can't pivot, if you can't adjust to what's happening, I don't apply that to whatever business you want.
Yeah.
So flexibility is key, and I'm very flexible. I try to be, at least. Cool.
So no, cool, man. Thank you for answering some of those questions, because I wanted to be sure that people get to know you too, because
I was wondering, that kind of, you threw me out there. Is that how it feels on your end? When I'm asking you questions, you said, oh, no, I didn't expect that.
No, not at all. Not at all. I actually like when you ask me questions because it means I don't have to think so much
Okay.
ahead of time. And, you know, it's, yeah. But so there is one resource that I come up with this week that I wanted to share. And it's called Answer the Public. I don't know if you've heard of it. It is basically a SEO research tool where you will put in a term. So for example, I'll put in workplace and it will give me a very nice summary. When I say summary, it is probably pages long and nice graphics and all the rest of it of what people are searching for in Google on workplace. So what are the questions they're asking? What are the topics they want to do? And it goes through alphabetically all the different aspects of workplace and things that they're looking at. So that's a really, really great tool. I just find it's called Answer the Public. And it's really cool whenever you go onto the site. You've got this old guy with glasses just looking at you, waiting for you to ask the public the question, you know, what do you want to know? And it's just him like looking at him. It's really funny. You got to go take a look at it. It's just hilarious. But it's definitely a resource worth looking at.
Well, I've always been curious. I mean, we've talked about marketing, SEO, SEM, different strategies that go along with those.
Yeah.
Because I know on Google, different search engines, being things like that, you can have terms that are similar as an option. And then there's, you know, you can anchor almost certain words where if this isn't in the phrase, this doesn't show up. And it sounds like that's kind of, without going into their service, another way to take a look and see what the public combines words with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That would just
it's no, I thought it was brilliant, and I thought, okay, well, this is really easy. I mean, I'm just going to structure content around these different questions, you know. So I think it's really cool. It's really cool, you know. So, all right. Anything else that you wanted to ask or you wanted to go over?
I wanted to point out, and because you mentioned being hard on yourself for hearing your own voice and saying who would want to listen to this. Now, remember, you've got an accent, right? So us over here in the U.S. sometimes we'll say, "Oh, he's knowledgeable with that accent," you know. Now we want to listen to him. So sometimes it gives off that flair, that flavor.
Fair enough.
Don't discount.
I'll have to take your word for it, you know.
Okay. Well, I hope you do.
No, for sure.
For everyone that joined us on Facebook, thank you very much. We'll be back again 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For everyone catching this video a little bit after. If you want to find us live, that's how to get a hold of us.
Yeah.
If not, if you have any questions for myself or Stephen, then get in touch with Open Source Workplace, where this content, the content we mentioned, and much, much more will be posted constantly. Quality content.
There you go. There you go. Thank you, Alek. Appreciate it and look forward to catching up next week.
Likewise. See you then.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.